This week, the Clarets face Europe-chasing West Ham in a bid to secure that Premier League survival. This is the None and Never podcast. Hello and welcome to another edition of the None and Never podcast. I'm your host, Natalie Bromley, and joining me this week are two regular panellists, one of whom we've not seen for a while. Welcome to the analysis show, young George and Robbie.
Hi.
Robbie, we've not seen you for ages.
I know, it's been a while, hasn't it?
It has been a while, but, quality, we want quality, not quantity, Robbie, so
Yeah.
we're very glad to have you back. George, we see you all the time, but nice to have you back on, sir.
Nice to be on. Nice to be speaking with Robbie.
Look at he's dancing at me. Listeners, he's dancing at me.
I was dancing. It's a shame when you said it's nice to see you again. Well, you don't see me because obviously we're just an audio podcast, so my dancing goes to waste.
We are, but producer Matt does record the video in the background, so at some point you might get a little bit of a George dance put out there on social media, so keep your eyes peeled. Actually, I don't remember the last time you two were on together. Have you done it this season, the two of you? I don't think you have you?
We did.
We did like a. I think we
really
might
early on.
When it was just me and George was chatting rubbish.
I think we did a solo one, yeah.
Oh, it was. It was was I on holiday or something? Yeah.
Yeah, I think we
had
were
a
just
chat.
after West Brom away, I think.
Yeah, it was. I do remember that. Goodness
I
me.
think.
Yeah, you did a good job. Well, I'm here to keep an eye on you both this week because, it just went chaos. If I remember rightly, that was some mammoth task that young Matt, our producer Matt, had to knit together after you'd done it. So at least we might have some calm here. Well, we are, of course, here on the analysis show to discuss this weekend's results. Bank holiday Monday, Clarets were home to West Ham. Back down to earth with a bump, I'm afraid, Clarets, as the team fell to a 2-1, 3-1. Finished 3-1, didn't it, in the end? 2-1, 3-1. 2-1. It was 2-1. My God. Listeners, we're 2 minutes and 2 seconds into the podcast and I'm already losing my marbles. The Clarets fell 2-1 to, quite frankly, a rampant West Ham side. Albeit a very good game. Disappointing, I think. George, let's start and come to you first. Disappointing to lose the game and to sort of like be a bit deflated after that fantastic result the week before. But actually, weirdly, a thoroughly enjoyable game.
Yeah, it's just especially a shame to lose after being 1-0 up and thinking, oh, here we go, beating a decent side here. And especially when we've broken this new record of longest winless run in the top flight at Turf Moor in a very long time, since before the Premier League existed. So it's a shame to lose on that front. But to be honest, and I think we've all said the same in the group chat last night, it was a thoroughly enjoyable game. I absolutely loved it. I think in the last few weeks, because we've been playing on a Sunday all the time, and I work on a Sunday lunchtime, so I've not watched us in ages. So last night I just absolutely loved watching us, and I think after the Super League stuff, I think I've sort of maybe take more note of this season a bit rather than just letting it fly by without fans. And I just loved last night. Obviously, it's a shame to lose, but I thought both teams were competitive, both played good football, both didn't just throw themselves to the ground like we see most other teams do every week. So honestly, I'd be happy enough if West Ham got top four after that. It was a lovely game to watch.
Yeah, it was, and I think that's a really important point, Robbie. One of the things that a lot of fans were looking at a few weeks ago when we weren't quite clear of the relegation zone yet, and we're all a little bit worried about where the points were going to come from. There were some fans who were absolutely adamant that we were going to get 3 points, like that we were easily going to beat West Ham at home. And I was never in that camp because I've been following them this season and I was following their progress. And even that, though, yesterday, it did still surprise me just how slick an operation they've become.
Yeah, they're a good side. I think you look at their recruitment in the summer. Obviously, they brought in like Kufal, who, Dwight McNeil had a really tough game up against him.
Yeah, he did.
I think Ben Rama's a really good player. Obviously, I think he's a player we probably would have wanted, or us fans would have liked us to be in for, but like he's just different class. Antonio just loves to score against us anyway.
Oh God!
And then I thought like Fornal. When I saw Fornal was playing central midfield, I actually fancied us. So I didn't think he was that much of a workman type central midfielder. I had him more as a selfish attacking midfielder who wouldn't track back, but he was excellent as well. We just couldn't cope with their midfield five, I suppose. But yeah, I think George mentioned there just the home record that's unwanted. It's not really like us to lose so many games at home. I can't think, when was our last home win? Was it Villa at home?
Yeah, it will be. Won't God? That's a long time ago.
Is
Is
that what it
that?
was?
Yeah, it must be Villa.
Yeah, I know. Obviously, a few fans of I saw it on Twitter after the game, like sort of mentioned they were concerned about our home form, but it does feel like the pandemic has affected every single Premier League club. Like you look at Liverpool, for example, they lost 6 home games on the bounce just after we beat them. Leeds won at the Etihad recently. Man United have struggled at home this season. It does feel like the home stuff is like across the board, so I'm not too concerned about that.
Just picking up on a quick point there, Robbie. Actually, you mentioned about not being a bit swamped a bit in midfield and not really coping with their formation. Do you think it was the right call last night to stick with a 4-4-2? Because as much as it worked the week before, I definitely felt we were getting lost a little bit in midfield, and I think I would have probably preferred to go back to 4-5-1. I felt like it was maybe a bit of a mistake in terms of tactics.
I think it during the second half, yeah. I think I can understand pre-match why you would go 4-4-2 and not change anything because the Wolves game was so perfect. But yeah, there was a period in the second half where you just felt like West Ham's third goal was inevitable, and we were just hanging on. And I would have preferred to see maybe Josh Brownhill play behind Wood, and I think it was when Gudmundsson come on, he were better on. He were better off coming on for Vidra
Yeah,
rather than Jay coming on, and maybe just going for a 5.
yeah, I
But I'm
agree.
not going to sit here and complain about tactics and stuff because I can
No,
totally
sure.
understand why we didn't change it.
Yeah, and that's the problem at the moment is it, sometimes you just got to hold your hand up and think, well, we just faced a better side, and if we had have
Yeah,
changed that tactics and gone stronger in midfield, he would have just changed it again, and would have probably the result was inevitable. George, that said, we did take the lead, and it was our man again, Chris Wood, who scored, quite frankly, a phenomenal penalty. I thought it was a superb effort. Was it a penalty for you? I've got to admit, when I first saw it at full speed, I was absolutely sure. But when it got slowed down to certain angles, I was starting to worry a bit that we might get this overturned by VAR. What was your view on said penalty incident?
Well, luckily I was too busy celebrating to see those slow mos. I was happy enough. Absolutely brilliant work from Chris Wood. I mean, obviously Thierry Henry picked it out at half time, but he got on the side of the centre back. Was it Diop? And but he was facing away from goal. It looked completely not dangerous at all. And then he just cleverly flicked it over his head and just obviously spanned the centre back the wrong way, and
Oh, it's
it threw the
amazing.
whole defence into chaos. And that's when obviously he got brought down for the penalty. So it was really brilliant work from Wood. He's been in fine form recently, hasn't he? I mean, he got.
Yeah.
We play Ultimate Team in our house, so we had the Team of the Week Chris Wood snapped up in the past few days. We bought him for our team, and he's just been on fire. And the penalty, I've got absolutely full faith in him because the one time I think the penalty that I most treasure over anything else was Olympiacos away, and I just remember he was on the spot, and at the time I was thinking, oh, heck, I don't want Chris Wood to take this, and I shouted, "Don't f this up, Burnley!" And before every penalty since, I've said the same thing because he scored that night and he scored last night, bottom corner. Keeper got a hand to it, but with that power and in the bottom corner, it takes a very good keeper to stop it. So just a brilliant penalty from Wood, and it's good to see him and Vidya working so well. And I think both of them were superb again last night.
Yeah, I agree. I'm going to come back onto them in a minute, but I just want to just take a moment just to reflect on that almighty mess up you made of trying to bleep your own swearing there. You realise that you actually just changed the wrong word. Hell was the word that you weren't. So you actually said the swear word and then went heck. So listeners, you won't hear all of this because producer Matt will have bleeped it all out, but that was some spectacular way of trying to self-mute, George. But anyway, moving on, Robbie. as George, your dad will be so disappointed in you, George. As he quite rightly put on, a quick moment to reflect on Chris Wood and Matty Vidra. I wholeheartedly agree. By far my favourite combination up front at the moment. And I was absolutely gutted for Matty when he got taken off. And his little face in the stand, he was so sad, shaking his head like, no. To me, I do think that was a mistake. I think those two, if you're going to stick with 4-4-2, I think they should have just stuck with them. I don't really know what Jay brought that Matty didn't have.
Yeah, I think Jay probably offers you a little bit more in the air in terms of like maybe linking up play and holding the ball up. I think that might have been in the thinking.
But he didn't, though. That's the problem.
No, Jay's been out of form pretty much all season. Really, he had the big moment for us in the second half, and he just couldn't find the back of the net. But that sort of summed him up this season. But yeah, I mean, Vidra's been. I don't think it was one of Vidra's better games last night, but even when he's not quite on it, you can see the threat that he offers. I think the way he runs channels is really intelligent. The link-up play with Chris Wood's really good. And there was a moment in the first half where he lobbed it over the keeper, but Diop got back to clear off the line. But it was just one of those moments where that was the only moment where he really got in behind the West Ham defence.
Yeah, I think that's probably fair, really. Turning then, sticking with you, Robbie, for a while. Talking then, obviously, the goals themselves, the two that we conceded. I mean, obviously, our lead didn't last very long to go 1-0 ahead. I think the second goal, I think we can probably be a little bit disappointed with in terms of just switching off in terms of defence. But I think certainly the first goal as well just felt to me like the defence were uncharacteristically just ball watching a little bit and they just weren't quite switched on. And that's fair.
Yeah, I think we were too deep, I think obviously Dwight got caught in possession in quite a dangerous area. So then Dwight obviously does his bit to try and get back, but our back four were on like the edge of the 6-yard box, and I just don't think we just didn't really get back into like a good shape or anything like that. And then the second one was also a bit of a mess where Matt Lawton goes down in the box for some weird reason, and Chris Wood is like covering at centre back, and Ben Mee's at right back, and it's just a bit of a mess for both goals. I think Dyche alluded to it in the post-match press conference. Both goals were a bit sloppy, but other than that, wasn't an awful lot wrong with our general performance.
No, I think that's really fair, actually. And I think you kind of look at it and you think, well, considering that we lost the game, and again, we lost from a winning position again, which is always disappointing. I couldn't really highlight any of our players as having a stinker at all. I didn't, everybody just played well. It's really hard. This is starting to sound a little bit like a West Ham podcast, George, because we're getting very, we're just being very complimentary, but it's just really hard to find fault with a performance when we just got beat by a better side and one who had perhaps more to play for than we did. I know we're not mathematically safe yet, and I know, and I'm going to share with our listeners in a minute what Tom did to me at the end of last week's recording, which was hilarious. Not that hilarious, actually, it really gave me nightmares, but I'll share that in a second. But it's looking likely. I think the stats are saying that there's only a 1% chance of us being relegated, 2% chance of Newcastle getting relegated, and a 96% chance of Fulham getting relegated. But even despite all, the chances are we're not going to go down. So I just wonder whether that was perhaps a contributing factor. If you're just beat by a better side, they had to win to keep that European push. We were kind of done. Do you think that's fair? I don't know. I think maybe that's been a bit harsh. What do you think, George?
I think it's fairly chill for us, to be fair. Like, we're not going to go down. It is fine. But at the end of the day, I think it'd be silly to look at the game and think, oh, it was a sign of like players not trying. I think it was just a really good game between two decent teams, and I think there's been some criticism of like certain players like Lawton. I've seen J-Rod in particular, which I think people are just completely blowing out proportion. Like, I think it's just the issue with Jay this season is that he's not got a run in the team yet. He's been out of form at times, but when he comes on and we're always losing a game. So he comes on and we just lump the ball up to him, and he can't actually do much with it. I mean, we're singing the praises of Vidra now, but Vidra hardly ever did anything when he came off the bench, because it's just a hard position for a striker to be in, to you only get to touch the ball maybe 3 or 4 times in 20 or 10 minutes. So it's hard to actually prove anything. So I think people are being very harsh unnecessarily on Rodriguez. And I thought it's just a decent display by everyone.
Sorry, George, can I just stop you there? I forgive me, and I don't know how many of our listeners have had this as well. I decided to join the social media blackout this weekend. So I literally just muted all my apps and put them in a folder that I couldn't be tempted to look at. So I wasn't tweeting, I wasn't even looking on social media during the game. And I've got no idea what fans, but I've heard this from a few people now, people saying that there's been some real shade thrown at Jay. What's been said? I don't understand the point.
Yeah, well, I was the same as you. I looked after midnight and, and I scrolled back, and I wish I hadn't. But it was just like, just the standard like FIFA, not FIFA, like the sort of like YouTube and like FIFA generation of like having like Westwood as the profile picture. And it was like, if I never see Jay again in a Burnley shirt, I'll be happy, or he can go at the end of the season, stuff like that. And I just think it's a sign of, I just think it's a sign of like the modern times, in that away from football, just in general, people just want short term benefit or glory. And like at the end of the day, Rodriguez has had one bad season. Like, he's going to have a 15-year career. Who gives a like? I'll be happy if he's here next season, because he looked really good last season, and it's just a case of not getting the minutes on the pitch this year, I reckon.
Yeah, sorry, just to interrupt. I think with football now as well, it's like everyone. If you lose a game, there automatically has to be a scapegoat. Regardless of how you play it, there always has to be a scapegoat.
Yeah.
And last night it was Matty Lawton, it was Jay Rodriguez, Josh Brownhill, even though he's been shafted in 3 or 4 different positions this year. I thought Jack Cork was excellent last night, and he got some criticism as well. Like, Jack Cork is so intelligent. Like, there was a moment where someone was closing him down from behind. Jack Cork just knew he was there and just spun him and just distributed the ball out wide. And like, some people just don't see like little things like that. And like I said, you lose a game against a side pushing for the top 4, clearly a better side than us, deserve to win on the night, but there has to be a scapegoat. So yeah, Matt Lawton, he was rubbish. Joe Rodriguez, rubbish. Vidra, he didn't score, he was rubbish. Chris Wood, he cost us £16 million. He scored 11 goals this season. He was rubbish.
It's ridiculous.
There's always got to be a scapegoat, and it never has to be. Like, just be gracious in defeat. Go, yeah, we got beat by the better side.
Yeah, I think that's definitely the attitude that we had in our group chat, and I think that's very much where we all were. I mean, I think there were a couple of points where I was being perhaps super critical, but not from a negative perspective, but more from a, these are the things that I want to see the side improve on. I think sometimes we can be a little bit wasteful in possession. You don't get spells of possession that much in the Premier League, and we seem to have this obsession with playing at 1,000 miles an hour, and you can't have more than one touch, and everybody's got to ping it to each other all the time. And you can see full passages of play of about 6 or 7 passages, and 6 or 7 passes, and nobody's got control of the ball at any point in that spell. And it's things like that, but they're not things to look at now and go, oh my God, we're so rubbish at that. It's right, okay, that's something that we need to work on next season. In those instances where we get possession, how can we be a little bit more controlled, and how can we be a little bit less wasteful? But then, George, you see a team like West Ham, and they're doing that, and they've already nailed that. So they're further ahead than we are in that development, which is why they're winning those games. And they're pushing for, like, the 5th in the league, for goodness sake, and they're going for Europe. So with that in mind, surely we should be approaching this as looking at a team like West Ham and saying, that's where we want to get to. That's who we want to be.
Yeah, it's just sad, that, isn't it, really? I don't know. Just for me, like, I just find that sad. The fact that 2 years ago we were, even last season, just miles better than them. And it's just like 2 years of sort of stagnation and sort of like obviously not spending in transfer windows. And now we're sort of left behind by all these teams. It's really sad. I mean, remember when we went to West Ham and we won 3-0 and they were protesting on the pitch and all that?
Yeah.
I mean, God, it feels like a million miles away. But I think West Ham's like attacking lineup just, it's something to behold, really. Obviously, Robbie mentioned it earlier. Ben Rama, I think loads of fans would have loved to have had him in the summer, but again, it was like a 20 million transfer.
Yeah.
We spent 1 million. It's just not going to happen. But they've got Antonio, who I've criticised in the past, but he's looking decent at the moment. Ben Rama, Lanzini's been a brilliant player for a few years now for West Ham, and then obviously bringing in the likes of Lingard on loan and having Jared Bowen, another one in the summer, or whenever we moved to West Ham, I think it was in January, who I was like, I wish we'd have signed him. So it's just a case of they're a team who attract decent players. Moyes has done a good job with them this season, and hopefully with ALK we can put some pressure on and maybe sign the sort of likes of Jared Bowen in the future, and maybe we can improve in that direction. But I think it would just be interesting to see what we do this summer, because for a few years now we've been sort of, not doing anything in transfer windows. And last night, if Alan Pace wanted a representation of how things have got to where they are, just look at last night and compare it to when we played West Ham a couple of years ago. You'll just see what a lack of transfer money does to a club.
Yeah, but it's not just that. I mean, there's another example that's even shorter than that. Look at Villa this season. Look at when they were up last season, they nearly went down last year, and we were by far a better side than them last season. And then this season, we can't. They're miles better than we are. That's just one season.
Yeah, I'm gonna contradict myself here. Actually, I'm gonna say that sometimes
well done.
you can't read into like just one season. Sometimes, like I'm saying, West Ham have left us behind, but they've had one good season. We were better than last season. Villa again, one good season. It doesn't mean next season they're gonna kick on. So I think sometimes you gotta. I'm reminding myself now. You got to sort of take a step back and think, oh, it's one season. Like, look, we finished seventh. We finished seventh one year, and we were amazing. It doesn't necessarily happen the next year. So I think I think there will be a different outlook on this next season, with or without transfer spending.
There you go. What a wonderful full circle that came there, listeners. You just managed to be witness to George's own therapy session there, where he managed to make his point and talk his way out of it all at the same time. This is what the Known and Never podcast does. It's a form of release. It's a form of therapy. You can talk through your Claret's wars. So let's pause there, because that's something we do want you to do. If you've got any comments to make on the points we've talked about so far, you know how to get in touch. You can tweet us at Known and Never, or you can email us at podcast@knownandnever. We want to know what you thought of that performance on Monday. Do you agree with the panel? Was it just beaten by a better side? Did you think that we played well, or do you disagree? Do you think we played poorly and we could have got something from the game? Is Jay Rodriguez the sum of all evil? Who knows? But do get in touch and let us know what your thoughts are on that. Robbie, it would have been nice last night to at least got a point, or even better, 3 points, just to completely wrap up survival this season. I've already mentioned this so far. We've got 12 points to play for now, 4 games left, and the Clarets sit 9 points ahead of Fulham, who take up that 17th place at the moment. Whilst you can look at that on one limb and say, okay, well, so this it's still not mathematically safe yet. There's 12 points. They could win all of their games. They've got to win 3 out of their 4 games, and we've got to lose them all. This is the way this is going. And when you look at those odds, that it's 96% chance that Fulham are going to go down. I said I would share this to you before, Robbie, and this is what. So listeners who were listening to last week's analysis show will know that I was declaring safety in another season in the Premier League, and I was happy Harry. As soon as we came off record, Tom said to me, Natalie, what are you going to do if Fulham beat Chelsea this weekend, we lose to West Ham, and Fulham beat us next weekend? And I suddenly had an almighty panic where I was like, oh my God. But obviously, clearly they didn't beat Chelsea, because they were never going to. But it's still, we haven't mathematically done yet. So I'm going to put this question to you. How do you feel if Fulham beat us at the weekend? Because that's the next game. We're away at Fulham as well. They have to win. If they don't win, they're down, essentially. If we get to 5 o'clock after the game on Saturday and we've got beaten by Fulham, there's 3 games left and it's just 6 points, and we've got to play some kind of tough fixtures. How are you feeling? Hypothetically.
I still think it'll be the same situation what I've found myself in the last maybe 4 or 5 weeks, where I don't think we're necessarily in danger of going down, but we're just looking over our shoulder where we don't need to be. I'll look back at results where it's like a bloody Southampton game, we were 2-0 up. that Newcastle game were 1-0 up. Like, this should be done and dusted.
Yeah.
And I think it'd be more of a kicking myself kind of mentality rather than in any real concern of Fulham winning 3 more games, because at the end of the day, I think we'll go to Sheffield United on the last day and win.
Oh, really? You're quite happy about that?
Yeah. Who else have we got? We've got Liverpool. Who's the other one? I can't think of what our games are.
Fulham. You're gonna have to.
We're proper fans, aren't we? Proper fans.
It's not just that.
True fans.
I just think. I'm getting old. I think my brain's going. So we play Fulham.
I forget.
Leeds. That's it. We play Fulham away.
Leeds.
Then we're at home to Leeds. Then we're at home to Liverpool, and then we're away at Sheffield United. So, I mean, they're not.
Leeds are a bit hit and miss, aren't they?
But also you could genuinely see us winning 2, losing 2. So let's say we lose against Leeds and Liverpool, but we beat Fulham and Sheffield United. That is obviously the 6 points that we need that will take us to...
I mean, our away form recently has been an awful lot better than our home form.
That's true.
Palace away was really good. Wolves away were really good.
Yeah, that's
Southampton
true.
In the first half I thought was really good. So I do think we have enough.
Yeah.
I'm more than confident that we'll win at least one of our final 3 or 4 games.
You think one win's going to do it? 39 points, survive. Yeah, I agree.
Yeah.
George, I think Robin made an interesting point there, though, is that I just don't want us to limp survival in 17th and be the best, like the best of the rest, like the worst of the rest. You know what I mean? It's like I want us to finish up the table as high as possible. And I know that sounds harsh, because how many times have we also said this season that we just want this blooming season to be over and done with? But it would feel like a real shame if we just, after all the progress we've made, if we just finished 17th on like 37, 38 points, wouldn't it?
Yeah, I'm going to do a cheeky plug here because I wrote about this in the New Clarets Trust newsletter. Yeah, that's out now, the April edition. Go read it. So I did like a little season review.
Go read it.
Yeah, I did like a little season review this season, and I said, and you can tell, you'll be able to tell you, I wrote it just after our house watched watched the first Harry Potter, because I talked about the Mirror of Erised, and the Mirror of Erised, Harry Potter looks into, and it reveals the deepest desires of the heart. So I said, oh, if you looked into that for a Burnley season, what would the deepest desires be? And I said, it wouldn't just be surviving in the Prem every season with this boring, let's scrape over the line and let's maybe beat Fulham and finish 17th. It would be, pushing for top 10 and maybe the occasional, like, amazing season like we had a few years ago. So I think it would be disappointing. But at the end of the day, this season, the highest we're going to get is like 13th, 14th. It's not like it's not the heavy heights, really, isn't it? Is it? I'm not that fussed. So I think I'm just in the camp, get this season over with, get fans back next year, improve our home form, and maybe go again next season with a better squad, fans in the ground, and starting from scratch rather than a rubbish season behind us. So we're safe now. Hopefully we'll beat Fulham, just because it'd be a bit embarrassing to lose that game, and hopefully finish the season on a bit of a high. Yeah.
Yeah, definitely. I agree with that. And it's interesting one talking about that fans thing, though. To be honest with you, George, I'm not paying a massive amount of attention to this 8 defeats at home stat, because it's just like, to me, this season, home and away means absolutely naffle. It's got to be different next year.
Well, yeah, you'd hope so.
Well, I said at the beginning, didn't I?
You'd hope it'd be better next season.
Oh, did you? Sorry, Robbie.
Yeah, sorry. I mentioned it at the beginning of the podcast where, Liverpool lost 6-7 home games on the bounce. Leeds won at the Etihad a couple of weeks ago. United have struggled at home all season. West Brom put 5 past Chelsea at Stamford Bridge. Like, the home form this year across the board is mental.
Yeah.
So I don't think it's worth like analysing at all.
There you go, George. Never mind. Stand down. Robbie has spoken. Robbie has said, not worth analysing at all. Final thoughts then, Robbie, from you, since we'll come back to you, since you've been sassy tonight, Robbie. I like it. This is what we've missed. This is why we want you on more often. We like sassy, Robbie. Final thoughts then. We're going into the last 4 games of the season. Hopes for the season. Hopes for the end of the season. What do you want to see out of the next 4 games?
I think what we've basically seen in the last few weeks, but just getting on the right side of the results. I think that's all we can ask for, really. Because I thought we played well against Newcastle. I thought we played all right against Southampton. We played all right last night. It's just a case of getting on the right side of those results. It's literally, as Sean Dyche says, it's fine margins. So I think if we can get on the right side of them, pick up maybe 4 or 5 points, then yeah, I'll be relatively pleased with that.
Yeah. George, same for you?
Avoid defeat at Fulham, because Fulham are naff, so it'd be an embarrassment to lose to them. And then
and Sheffield United.
Yeah, and then hopefully go to Sheffield United on the final day of the season and turn up there and, just kick them while they're down, get the 3 points, end the season on a high. And then, yeah, sorry, Sheffield United.
Wow.
And then obviously go into the off season and hopefully maybe get a few signings under our belt, but that's a long way off yet.
Yeah, it is. Quick interesting point, actually, just before we move on to some wider footballing points. It's getting to that time of year, George, where the club's going to start, and I don't even know if the voting's gone up yet, because it usually coincides with the Player of the Year awards. Player of the season is going to be a tough one this year. I think it's got to be Chris Wood, surely. I don't really know who else I would give it to.
It's interesting you've actually just said that, because Burnley literally just tweeted about it 40 minutes ago. Cast your vote now.
No, you're joking.
Yeah, so I don't know if you've been paid by
my God, nobody's going to believe me. Nobody is going to believe me that
Yeah, what a cheeky plug that was, Natalie. How much are you getting paid here? Are you on commission?
Listeners, I swear to God, I did not know that. And I have not really even been on Twitter all day, because I've only just coming out of the social media blackout. That is hilarious. I wrote it on my script for tonight to put Pit Player of the Year. Well, carrying on the question anyway. Thanks, George, dropping me in it there. Chris Wood, surely, I think, has got to be I can't. There's not really been a standout player, has there, really? I think they've all put in a collective effort. They've all had spells out of form. They've all had spells where they've been in form, but Wood's got the goals. I think it has to be him, doesn't it?
Yeah, I think so. I think there was a spell in the season when I know it feels like 3 years ago now, at least to me, when Ben Mee came back from injury, and we'd been awful at the start of the season, and he came back and we went on a good run, and it was like he'd shored up the defence. But I think he's not been as
It was last season.
No, that was this season as well. I'm sure I wrote about it. It was this season.
Yeah. Was it this season as well?
The first 5 games.
Yeah, we started with Kevin Long and Jimmy Dunn at Leicester.
Oh my God, exactly. So we did. You know what?
It felt like 3 years ago.
Apologies, I blanked that out of my brain.
It feels like so long ago.
Yeah, first home game against Southampton. First home game against Southampton, them two. It was scary watching us.
Oh my Lord.
Dale Stephens' debut. Christ. Dale Stephens Player of the Year. And tell Richard, there you go.
I'd legit, honestly, I was looking through the bench last night, because I was, and I'd forgotten that much, that not only I'd forgotten that Dale Stephens played for us, but I'd turned around to Mr. Bromley and I went, oh God, that's a really defensive bench. I said, and we've not got any midfield options at all. And Mr. Bromley was like, Dale Stephens. I was like, Christ, yeah, forgot he played for us. Also forgot he was a midfielder. Never mind.
I had the same realisation with our bench last night. I saw him and I was like, oh wow, he's not played for us in a good few months now. He's just not even made an appearance. So yeah, I think Ben Mee obviously did have an impact in the first half of the season, but then he made a couple of mistakes and he's not been as stellar, I wouldn't say, this second half of the season. Pope again, he's not, he had an amazing season last season. We've just not got as many clean sheets this year. I think there is no standout player because it's not been an amazing season. But Chris Wood, 4 seasons in a row, getting 10 or more goals in the Premier League, an astounding achievement, and he's one of only 6 strikers to have done so in the last 4 years, alongside the likes of your big names like Harry Kane, Salah, and stuff. So I think Chris Wood, just for his consistency for us, and just for the way how when we've been struggling the last few months, he's been the one to get the goals, and he's sort of just gotten us over the line, I think, in a way, especially with that Wolves game. So yeah. He's going to get my vote when I vote tonight, because I've been told by Natalie to do it on the podcast.
Purely coincidental. Robbie's nodding his head at me quite enthusiastically over the video, so I'm presuming that Robbie's also going with Chris Wood. But Robbie, George just mentioned something there about defence and obviously Ben Mee and Tarkin not quite looking as rigid in defence as we sometimes like them to be, which prompted me to remember the conversation we had just before we came on the air. We had a bit of a conversation pre-recording about the balance between being too defensive and being not the most entertaining of football, but sometimes getting us the points we need in terms of a draw or maybe just a 1-0 win and edging it. And we talked about the strategy of opening up the play a little bit recently and trying to play a bit more expansive football and creating a few more chances, and how that then comes at the expense of leaving our defenders a little bit more exposed than they're perhaps used to and conceding more goals. So I guess the question I was going to put to you was, given that that's the way we want to go, we want to strive to be more attacking and more open, more of a threat in open play. Do we accept that for a few seasons we might end up being around 15th, 16th in the table whilst we adapt to that style of play and bring in the better quality players who will be able to improve us in that area? Is that the sacrifice?
Yeah, I think so. I think we're in a weird situation where we've got the Chris Wood and Vidra partnership up front, which is blossoming, and it's been a real. It's probably been one of the highlights of this season, to be honest. The Vidra Wood partnership. There is we do need to sort out the gap between the back four and the midfield four. I think it was evident last night where Fornals and Lingard were just getting in between the lines far too easily, and that's where the goals come from for West Ham. We did it at Old Trafford where we played with a midfield three and had Josh Brownhill as more of the advanced midfielder, and we looked a little bit more solid, and we still looked a threat on the break. Whether that'll be something we do against Fulham, maybe, because obviously, as I said, against West Ham, but do you sacrifice the Wood Vidra partnership? And I think that's probably in the back of Sean Dyche's mind right now. Especially, it'd be so harsh on Vidra because he's waiting for a chance and he's taken his chance, and now he's in danger of losing his place due to no fault of his own. It's probably due to Sean Dyche, having a different, philosophy on game and being more expansive. So it is a weird one. I don't really know what I'd do in his shoes. I'm glad I'm not having to make the decision, to be honest.
Yeah, I'm glad. I spend most of my days being very glad that I don't have to make decisions, and I'm not Sean Dyche for various reasons. Would you agree with that, George? I mean, I know you. I actually can't remember. Are you more results orientated or are you more entertainment orientated? I feel like you might be more results orientated, and that it doesn't really matter how we win as long as we get the points on the board. But I might be doing you disservice there.
No disservice here. That's my philosophy on football. I've grown up with like Sean Dyche school of football, so that's right up my street. If we go somewhere and absolutely scrap a 1-0 win, there's no sweeter sight in my eyes. I mean, yeah, 4-5-1, that might be a nice little change for us next season. Because we see a lot of teams like West Ham last night. They play one up front, but then they've got all these dynamic attackers in behind them, and they just absolutely tore us apart all night. So that that could be something we sort of test the water with. Hopefully McNeil stays, and then we just need to sign wingers regardless because we've got two crops in our squad. So maybe if we get some attacking players like that, it might be something that we work with. And then if we've got this new a bit more expansive take on the game, it could prove fruitful. So as long as we stay up and we have some good results, it's fine by me. But let's not go down trying to play like Blackpool. That's what I'm saying.
Oh wow, gosh, quite right. Amen to that. I wasn't maybe suggesting we're going to try and play like Blackpool. I was thinking more like City, but whatever, George. So I'm going to stick with you on this one, actually, George, because moving away from the weekend's game itself and moving on to more wider footballing matters, we, of course, were robbed of a game on Sunday. I don't think anybody missed this news this week. Of course, the anti-European Super League protests of the weekend spilled into the stadium on Sunday at Old Trafford, and basically ended the game getting postponed due to not lack of safety, but major safety fears. George, you've been quite vocal on this to start off with, and I know that you have quite strong views on the borderline, shall we say, what fans should and shouldn't be doing. So I guess why don't you kick us off and just give us the take on where you felt the match abandonment and the protests on Sunday left us?
Yeah, I thought it was quite interesting how the Sky covered it towards the end with obviously the postponement, because they were I think they were sort of, well, Souness in particular was referring to like, oh, there must be something that's happened outside the ground to prompt this postponement. But I think all it was that obviously they couldn't guarantee the safety of the Liverpool coach coming all the way through central Manchester to get to the game. So I think the postponement was like sort of fair enough in a way, but I think it can be easy to blow it out of proportion of like, or they thought the players were in serious danger once they got in the stadium. But I think the actual protest itself was brilliant. Obviously, United fans have had enough. They've said for years upon years, and it's not just. I loved how Souness was trying to just say it was just because they're not winning the league anymore. But they've said it's for many years, the majority of them, for stuff like they're not investing in the local area, they're not investing in the stadium. There was a debacle over forcing fans to pay for season tickets and disproportionate pricing. Everything that non-football people came into the club and basically have trashed the club in a way, and the relationship with the fans. So I think they've obviously had enough as a fan base. And at the end of the day, they wanted to create like a global news story saying we're against the Glaziers, and I think bang on, they absolutely did that. Now, no one's here trying to justify this security guard getting his eye. He got cut below his eye. I think it was a police officer, sorry. But the actual trespassing,
Yeah, it was a police officer.
but the actual going into the ground, getting onto the pitch, absolutely brilliant. They've managed to get onto TV worldwide. I think it's very easy for Sky to 2 weeks ago support direct action from fans and be all supportive of this fan movement, and then 2 weeks later criticise when it goes too far in rabbit ear air quotes over here. So I think there's a couple of things which some idiots, obviously, there's always going to be a minority who obviously hurt this police officer. That's not on. But the actual trespassing, I've got nothing against it. Like, it's really, it's a minor infraction in the fight for a better club for themselves. So I think it's direct action, just like we saw 2 weeks ago with the Super League protests, and I thought it did exactly what they wanted to do at the start of the day. So I was in full support of it.
Yeah, Old Trafford is like a 10-minute walk from my flat, and I was very tempted to go
Oh
just
wow,
to see,
really?
to sort of see what it was like. Yeah, I didn't go in the end, but I was very tempted. It was weird actually because I was out driving, I was going back to the flat around the time, and Salford was dead. Like there were no cars on the road. I thought it was going to be chaos. I thought it was going to be police everywhere, but Salford was actually dead. But what was interesting that George mentioned it with, the protest wasn't necessarily against the European Super League. That was just the final nail of the coffin. It was literally the lack of funds around the stadium, the community. When their next door neighbours, I hate it when people say Man City have oil money. I absolutely hate that. But you look at Man City and the way their training grounds, they've invested in grassroots football, they've invested in local schools around the area, and Man City are probably the best run club in the world right now. And Man United are probably one of the biggest clubs in the world, probably one of the worst run clubs right now with the debt they have.
Would you have if you had have gone down, Robbie? Would you have literally just been in a spectator observing, or have the events of the past couple of weeks just ignited such a passion for getting control of football generally back into the ideas of fans? Do you think you would have ended up? I'm not suggesting in the violent ones, obviously, I don't mean that, but in terms of the peaceful protests, do you think you would have ended up getting involved?
Well, I signed the 50+1 petition. I have a few good friends who are big Man United fans, so I signed that on behalf of them, because I think it is something us fans do need to take control back of again. But if I was to go, it would have been more from a spectator. Like I would have been maybe sat back on
Yeah,
a wall or something, more watching it, more trying to get a few likes on Instagram rather than trying to wallop a police
honestly.
officer in the face. But yeah, and it's weird how George mentioned it before about it was a relatively peaceful
Yeah.
protest, I believe. But the media always try and twist the narrative by mention the headlines are always about the one idiot who decided to smash up a Sky broadcast camera
They
and
are,
stuff
but
like that. That
they are
apparent,
important headlines, though, Robert. And I do think we have to be
yeah,
very. They do have to be very careful, and I agree with everything that you're saying, but I just do not condone violence in any way, shape, or form. Whether it's
no,
committing damage and smashing up a camera, whether it's hurting another police officer, irrespective of how good the intentions are and how important the demonstration, you have to stamp those things out. So I do have some sympathies with the broadcasts. I think they do have to make that point. George, sorry, did you want to just come back in on that point?
Yeah, I thought some. It was interesting how the Sky pundits talked about it after the game, and I thought Carragher spoke really well and really balanced in the way that he went about it. He obviously said, "Look, there's these idiots, but don't let that distract from the aim of today and the fact that." There is going to be some idiots sometimes, but it was a peaceful protest on the whole, and I think it's very easy for Sky to get it wrong sometimes in the fact that they've got these players who have by nature been professionals for 20 years of their lives. They've not. It's all well and good them talking about fan culture and all this, but they've not been a fan, an actual going fan for nigh on 25 years or more, since they were kids. So I think rather than them talking to the Sky pundits for hours upon hours on Sunday, was it? Yeah, on Sunday, they should have just gone and asked the people who
Yes.
were protesting, who were outside, and actually got their view on it. And why are you protesting? I mean, it was such a missed opportunity, and it just speaks to the nature of how football fans in general are overlooked. And I think now you were talking about the media, obviously, and Carragher did well to bring up the fact that football fans have historically been characterised in a negative way. It's always like the hooligans, this and this and this, and they've got blamed for certain stuff that's happened when they shouldn't have been blamed, especially for like Carragher's generation. And I think why not just go
Yeah.
into the streets and just get a camera on the peaceful protesters outside and say why are you protesting, and just get their view on it. It was such a missed opportunity. Yeah, it was. Yeah, Robbie's just said COVID protocols might have prevented them from doing that, which is true. And I think it is interesting, just as a post event, to think about how there's been less of a focus on the COVID breaks, in the past, few months, and hopefully things are getting better. But it's just something to think
Yeah.
about. Ask the fans, not just focus on Graham Souness's view, who's not been a fan going a football going fan for
Yeah.
probably 40 or 50 years. So I don't know how old he is. So maybe I'm aging him there.
I mean, I think there's a bit of cynic in me that just thinks that Sky were leading the fight against a European Super League, and quite rightly as well. And the vast majority of things that they were saying were absolutely true, and really, I think they really pitched their support for the supporters perfectly. But I'm not naive enough to think for 1 second that a factor that was driving their um, what's the word, fight against it was the loss of revenue and the damage that would have done to the Premier League product. Where Sky have got a monopoly on the Premier League, and I know full well that would have impacted on it. And it did feel a little bit like that again on Sunday, in that we that they part of the things about the complaint about the demonstration is that obviously they've lost revenue because they've not been able to broadcast a game, and it was Super Sunday, prime time, Liverpool against United, worldwide audience, and obviously they've not been able to bring that, and I think that probably doesn't help things. So it's nice to have a big broadcaster like Sky on board, and BBC and Match of the Day, and people who are prepared to not toe the party line and actually prepared to come out and fight for some of these. But I've also got one eye on the fact that there may very well be ulterior and monetary motives behind some of those. Quick point then from you, Robert, before we leave it, where the dust has settled now in the European Super League. We're a couple of weeks past. Football is getting back to normal, apart from obviously the demonstration at the weekend, which was obviously more United led than Super League led. But where do we go from here? There's still the conversation about whether the top six are going to be punished. Are we in danger of this just getting forgotten about and we just start again next season as normal?
probably. I think it's like but I can't think what it was that they were the top six were trying to push like 12 months ago. It's I can't think what that was called. That's going to annoy me now. But it does feel like they got away with that scot free. They get away with this scot free. Like you get so many badly run clubs get point deductions, massive fines. Like Sheffield Wednesday, for example, I think started this season on minus 12 points. Wigan got relegated from their point because of their point deduction a couple of years ago because of poorly ran. The top six, like they should get a point deduction as well and massive fines, but because they are they bring in like most of the tourism and most of the money into the league, then I just think they'll get away with it again.
Yeah, I agree. I agree with you, Robbie. There, I think it's just an issue in the fact that it can be quickly forgotten about. I know they've dished out. They've done in the past week that the directors involved with the Super Six, so like the Ed Woodwards and stuff, they've been pushed out of the clubs, and I just think we're just getting into that sort of stage of now. It's been 2 or 3 weeks. We've not heard any pushback really, but you've got to punish them. Like I don't care about them being it's punishing the club for that these people have done. At the end of the day, the people who own the clubs and run the clubs, so your Glaziers and your is it the Henrys, the Henry family at Liverpool, the fans benefit from their investment into the club. The fans, you can't just pick and choose when you get the consequences of those owners' actions. So while I don't blame the fans, the Wigan fans, and like Robbie said, they've gone through this punishment before and lost points this way. So I think points deduction should happen. I don't think it's going to happen. That's the issue. And I wanted to ask you both really on the more fundamental nature of change after this. Is that how likely do you think it is that we do the 50+1 thing? Because it was interesting on Gary Neville said on Sunday, he was talking about all the reform that the supporters groups and stuff are trying to do and about regulation. But the United fans don't want regulation of the Glaziers. They want the Glaziers out. And Neville said he doesn't think 50+1 would work in this country. So I think that's what I wanted to ask you both, because I know, Natalie, you've got like the legal side of it. Like I don't know how would it work? Would it even be possible? Because I just think that'd be something that would obviously fundamentally change football in this country and would be a positive step. But I don't know how likely it is.
I think first and foremost, it's highly unlikely, and I think probably people talk about this has obviously come about because of the German league. The German adopt this model, but the reality of it is that the money isn't there in Germany. It's not controlled by news networks and television revenues, and there isn't an equivalent of Sky in the Premier League as they have in the Bundesliga. Yes, of course, the Bundesliga is their main league, and it's televised, and they have good teams in there that get themselves into the Champions League every year. But it's not. It doesn't drive the money and the salaries that the Premier League does. So it's an easier thing for them to have in Germany because they don't have serious businessmen at the helm who have financial interests that they need to protect. And I think if we were having this conversation 15 years ago when the Premier League was just starting, or even earlier than that when the Premier League was in its earlier days, I think that would have been an easier chat. But now I think we've gone too far. The major corporations and the PLCs that own some of the biggest clubs in the Premier League, they have absolutely no interest whatsoever in allowing the fans to have any level of say. And we're going to hopefully try and get Liam to speak to us in the next couple of weeks about some of the stuff that's been happening in the Clarets Trust in the background. It's hard enough for the Clarets Trusts that each club has to just even get information from the clubs, never mind act on it. So my view is I just can't see it happening. I don't know how you feel, Robbie.
No, I can't see it happening either. I've got family over in Germany, and every time I've visited, I always ask about how their football works with the 50+1, and it just doesn't seem not feasible. But I just don't think it would work over here at all.
No, sorry, George. I think we have spoken. It's a no-goer. Listen, I like the idea of it. The romance of giving football back to the fans sounds amazing, and it's always been a dream to have some element of control over Burnley Football Club. But I've realised for a long time that is nothing more than a pipe dream. But it's an interesting one. Who knows? I think it's one of these that we need to keep an eye on. I think my biggest disappointment will be is if this just fizzles out now and we don't hear any more of it, and next season just starts as it would do, and we just essentially let these clubs get away with it and nothing else is done. I fear that is going to be the case. I think that's all we've got time for this week. I think we should need to be wrapping that up. We've chatted about lots of different things, and I didn't have anything else that I wanted to raise with you guys. So I think we're going to call that a night. My thanks as ever go to everyone who has contributed to making this podcast, to my colleagues, young George and Robbie. Hooray! Robbie's finally coming back, for joining us this week and talking through all those talking points. To Band Joyce for giving us their music, which is royalty free. Thanks very much, which we use for the podcast. To producer Matt for knitting it all together and getting it out there. But my final thanks to you, the listener, for downloading and listening to this podcast. Your support is very much appreciated, and we would not be here without you. Dave and I will be back with a preview show looking ahead to the Fulham game at the weekend. That will be out on Friday. And then the rest of the team, whoever's with me next week, will be back to hopefully talk about 3 much needed points. Well, actually not that much needed, but 3 needed points away down at Fulham and another season in the Premier League. In the meantime, take care. If you've got any questions, comments, suggestions, you know where to reach us. But other time, we'll be back next week. I've been Natalie Bromley. This has been the None and Never podcast. Until next time.